All right, so another week of e-learning with U.S. Government Honors. And I wanted to start off by going over this chart that you turned into me, the Bicameral Congress chart. So these are the correct answers that you should have on the Senate versus the House for these first four elements. So remember, states are represented equally. There's 2 per state in the Senate. 2 times 50 makes it that there's 100 total members, and remember their term length is 6 years. In comparison to the House of Representatives, the states get their representation based on population. So every state has at least 1 member, and then you get more depending on your population. And that's where the census is really important, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. So the total max amount of number of members in the House of Representatives is 435. And this number does not go up and does not go down. It's always 435. Just the way that the seats are apportioned through the 50 states, depends on the population. So if we were to add a 51st state, there would still be 435 members, but then we'd have to pull from one of the states and give them one representative. And remember, the term length for our House reps are 2 years. So the 17th Amendment, before 1913, before the 17th Amendment, senators were actually chosen by the state legislatures. So those, remember, we have a federal government, we have federalism, and you have, state level has legislative, and then at the national level, there's legislative. And that state level legislature chose the senators. But because of the 17th Amendment that was passed on April 8th, now the people directly elect senators. Now elections. Elections in the House of Representatives. I put Florida's in relation here so that you can relate to it better. In the House of Reps, remember, every seat is up for election every 2 years. Florida has 27 House Representatives districts. You actually vote in your district, and it's not based on counties. This is actually the most current district map of the congressional national districts. And there are about the same amount of people in each district. There's about 600,000 people within each district in the state of Florida and throughout the nation as well. Then senators, in comparison, remember, they have a term length of 6 years, but there's still an election every even year for senators. Every state has 2 senators, just like Florida, of course. The elections are conducted at large, meaning the entire state votes for a senator. You don't get divided by counties or by your districts. You still vote at your normal polling place, but you're voting as a whole, the whole Florida. And remember that continuous body that the Senate has, one of our key vocab terms that we had last week. Since the terms are 6 years, the elections are staggered, so only 1/3 of the senators are up for election each 2 years. Like this past election we had in 2018, that's when we got the Senator Scott. This year in 2020, in this election, we do not have a senator election because that's our off year. And then in 2022, we will have Marco Rubio possibly run up for election again, or he might retire, or whatever the case may be. Now, the last row of that chart from last week is about the census. And the census is something that's going on right now since it's, every 10 years. It's 2020. And I put out a link for you and your family to fill out the census if you haven't already. I did a poll at that interim week that we had after spring break to see who had done that yet or who had even known what a census is. And the census is, finding out, who lives where. And it's really important to the House of Representatives because about that reapportionment. Once we get all the data this year, next year, or the end of this year rather, we will decide on, how many seats everybody gets, which affects your elections there. Last census results, of course, was 10 years ago, and these were the apportionment numbers. So all the dark blue states there, like Arizona, Florida, Georgia, etc., gained more seats because their population increased. And then states over on the right with the yellow orangey color, like Illinois, Iowa, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, etc., lost populations, and so they lost seats. And a lot of times, if you notice the states that are losing seats and the ones that are gaining, most of the blue states are where people are moving to, and then a lot of the orange states are where people are leaving from. And I would imagine that probably this census will show that Florida will probably gain at least one more seat, because people are always moving to Florida. Now, we saw these maps earlier, or similar maps, I should say, not exactly the same. And I wanted to have you think about what's the difference between these two maps. I'll give you a second to think about that. Now, on the left, you notice the two main colors. You have red and blue, maybe different shades of blue, different shades of red. And red and blue, remember, that represents the two major parties, political parties that we have, red being Republican and blue being Democratic. And this represents how the last senator election went. What counties, they've divided into counties, voted for a Republican candidate and who voted for a Democrat. On the right map there, that is a congressional district map there. Remember, each solid color there that goes over multiple counties, in some instances, or sometimes less than a county, especially when you look at, the South Florida area and the Miami-Dade area, looking at, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco County here. We have a lot within that region. And then up in the northeast, around Jacksonville is another highly populated place, even a little bit in the center where Orlando is. You see that we have smaller ones because there's a more dense population. Remember, each of these have about 6,000 people live in them. It's just the ones that are bigger have a more, spread out population because it's a little more rural, especially like on the bottom south, that brown area there, you got the Everglades. So not a lot of people living in the swamps. All right, so this week in Pearson Realize, it's really important that you guys go into Pearson. If you're having problems, we can Zoom meet and I can show you how to do that so you can get in there. That's how you're getting your information. And then I'm just kind of following up and clearing up any misconceptions each week as well. But these are the 5 activities. Notice there's no readings this week. It's a couple videos and some of these interactive maps and charts. We're doing lawmaking this week. So in your notebooks, or you could do it right on Pearson, or you could do it on the document that I sent that's called Lawmaking. The first activity in Pearson is there ought to be a law, where it's going to ask you the same questions. It shows you a few laws that have been created and it says, what do you think should be a new law in the United States? Write down your idea, list reasons why you think it's important, and list a step you would take to turn it into a law. Again, you can do this right in your belly up in your notebook on page 867. You can do it in the document, and again, you can do it in Pearson Realize. So starting our notes on 68, I'm going to title this Lawmaking. The first thing I want you to take a look at is the video of how Congress is organized. This is a great video to help fill in your vocabulary chart for this week. They go over lots of the words. Remember, if you didn't quite catch them, you can pause it, you can rewind it, you can play it again. That's what's nice about, the videos, is because you can kind of take it at your own pace. You can repeat things if you need to. There's 2 key questions I want you to write down in your notes, and those are here for you and as well on that document. Then the next piece is the interactive chart about the congressional leadership. Now this chart has old information about who is in these positions right now because it's from 2013. So I'm going to show you on the next slide here who is in there now. I would almost jot this sentence down. It's from this interactive chart as well. Every other January, Congress begins a new term. New representatives and senators begin their work under the leadership of presiding officers and party leaders of each chamber. Now, the important thing is to know what exactly is a presiding officer, what is a majority floor leader, what is a majority or majority-minority whip. And here's that same, it's kind of similar to the word chart that I gave you in the Word doc, or you could do one like this. There's an extra box on the left-hand side just because of the way this chart is organized in my program. It's nothing to put in there. There's only one person on the left side in the House, but there are two on the Senate. And that interactive chart will kind of explain that for you. Now I wanted to show you who is there in Congress now. So in the House, our presiding officer, our Speaker of the House, is Nancy Pelosi. The Majority Floor Leader, which is a Democrat, Steny Hoyer. He represents the Democrats on the House floor. Then we have our minority floor leader. This is a Republican, Kevin McCarthy. He represents all of the Republicans on the House floor. Now, the whips, they're not necessarily important to know who is really in the whips right now. I don't have a picture, but our majority whip is Representative James Clyburn, and the Republican whip is Representative Steve Schalles, I think is how you say his name. On the Senate side, our presiding officer is our Vice President of the United States. This is Mike Pence, who's a representative of the Republican Party. Our President pro tempore is Chuck Grassley. He's a Republican senator from Iowa. The majority floor leader, so Republican candidate from Kentucky, Mitch McConnell. And then our minority floor leader here is Senator Charles Schumer. He is a Democrat from New York. And again, then we got our whips, but they aren't necessarily important for us. So I don't have a picture or their names for us. But that is our current. You'll see that it's much different than 2013 because things have shifted. I mean, we got a new president, so of course we have a new vice president, etc. So the next piece, after you go through that interactive chart, I want you to go through another one here, or no, sorry, not yet. I forgot I have two questions with that interactive chart that has the old information. So answer these two. These are the questions that come right from the chart. So once you get the right answer, you can jot them down in your notes or put them in the Word document. That's the key thing that's important there. And then of course, if you put the answer and save it in Pearson Realize, it saves it for you so you can look back at it if you want to too. All right, so interactive map is next about the state representation back in the 113th Congress from 2013. I want you to jot down some of the information that you see in the chart. This is a nice, pulling back from the knowledge that you gain from the elections unit about political parties and elections, which I also mentioned earlier in this video as well about what the red and blue represent. And these are the questions I want you to add on page 68 of our notebooks. And then the last piece is taking a look at the video about making laws. Pretty much, I want you to write down, these are the 5 steps that you want to remember about how a bill becomes a law. The video will go over a lot more than this, but these are the key 5. You get introduced the bill, it goes into committees, it goes to the floor debate for vote, and then technically it goes to the other house, which goes through the same steps. Then it comes out to the conference committee, and then the president has his actions. And we'll go more into those president actions when we get to the next branch next week. So what you need to submit to EDSB this week is the 3.5 vocab and take the notebook 3 quiz, which will pop up on Wednesday after school around 3:30 or so, and then we'll close at midnight on Friday is your goal. There's no belly down this week, so leave that 67 blank for now. As always, text message me if you have any urgent issues. You can message me on Edsby. I'll be contacting home for those that are missing some work and your grades are even more so with your grades hurting from that. Remember, if you do have any zeros, you can turn them in still. That's always been a policy of mine. I always put zeros in so that you know that you are missing something, because that's easier to see that because it affects your grade. But we can definitely turn those zeros into some points. Just turn them on in. Remember, try to click that submit button and enter in your work through Edsby, not through messages, because it goes right to the grade book and I can grade it there. Thank you. You guys, stay safe. Be good.